So I'm going to open our meeting and just ask everyone to take their spots. We have a number of elected members here. I won't run, do I need to run through? I guess I do. At the moment we have Deputy Lord Mayor, Councillor Harvey, Councillor Posselt, Councillor Elliott, Councillor Dutta, Alderman Bloomfield, Councillor Kelly, Councillor Kitsos and Alderman Zuko that are in attendance. I think we have an apology from the CEO, and we have Mr. Arthur helping here tonight. Now just if I could ask everyone, just a bit of an unusual request, if I may. I understand that we have a deputation related to an item in our closed agenda. So what I'm proposing is that somebody moves that we move into our closed portion of our meeting first, and then we hear the deputation.
Happy to do that.
Okay, so that's moved by Councillor Harvey. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against say no. It's carried unanimously. So I'll close the closed portion and open the open portion of the meeting. And just move, if someone could move the minutes of the 17th of November of our last Hobart Workshop. Councillor Kitsos, any discussion on those minutes? All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against say no. Carried unanimously. Supplementary items, there being none. Indications of conflicts of interest, there being none. No transfer of agenda items.
Can I suggest a transfer of agenda to transfer the North Hobart structure plan to the next item?
So what item is that one?
Sure.
8.1. Okay. So that's been moved by Councillor Posselt. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against say no. Carried unanimously. We are moving on to that item. So who is going to present that? Ms Lawley?
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Yes, Jennifer Lawley is speaking to this item and Joe Hickman is supporting.
Thank you. So this is just an item for workshopping, not decision.
I'm happy with the way. I'll try and get through this fairly quickly. I know we've already been here for a little while. Hopefully by now you've had a look at our annual implementation update report. We tried to make sure it provided enough detail for you to feel confident for our work plan for this next year. Today I'm just going to go through a few things in a bit more detail. As you know, with the implementation of the structure plans, with the modes of delivery, we sort of work around this idea of we're either delivering it, we're either partnering to deliver it, or we're advocating. And sometimes it's a combination of all three. The timing for each of the projects, as we talk about today, sort of will be working under that approach of the Capital Works program, our strategic plans, and how our annual plans work. So we are working to financial years when we're talking about years. And the projects that I'll be focusing on today is really looking at that short term, the 0 to 4 year period. And then the mechanisms for implementation, obviously there's all different mechanisms and it depends on the project. But as you know, we are working on planning scheme amendments, there's capital works, potential capital works improvements, as well as lots of potential partnerships and strategic alignments on things. All right.
Jen, how long do you expect to do presentation?
20 minutes at most. Yep. Alright, so we'll be talking about 5 key projects, and we've tried to make sure that the 5 key projects, the priority projects in the short term, have touched on all of the goals that are set out in the neighbourhood plan. So the goal 1 about welcoming an inclusive environment, goal 2 is around that creative and diverse neighbourhood on Palawa country, goal 3 is around that resilient and sustainable neighbourhood, and goal 4 is around that accessibility and being a walkable neighbourhood.
What I'm going to suggest, Jim, because we've had feedback that our workshops are sort of very PowerPoint heavy and lots of presentation, is that after sort of one section, we see if there's comments or questions, including from the members of the public, and then we'll move on to the second bit. Otherwise, it's sort of like 20 minutes of talk, and then there's no feedback. So, if that's because I think it's divided into 4 different action points.
Yeah. So what we can do is I'll talk through just the priority project number 1, which is the planning scheme amendments. It's a little bit dry. I have a feeling the most interesting one, and there'll be information that you're going to see today that you haven't seen yet for Condell Place. I feel like that's going to be the one that you'll want to talk about. But I'll just talk you through the planning scheme amendments.
Yeah,
and then the main focus of today will be on that Condell Place car park. The Community and Sports Precinct Master Plan, the greener and more resilient streets, and the accessible and walkable neighbourhood. I'll talk about them briefly, but there'll be further workshops, particularly on the Sports Precinct Master Plan. We sort of want to get through this week, obviously with the big vote in LegCo, before we, I think, have a really in-depth discussion around North Hobart Oval after this week. So, planning scheme amendments. Just in terms of the timeline of priority of projects, we've already commenced this work. As you've seen in the last presentation I did on Central Hobart, we have quite a lot of planning scheme amendments happening concurrently, and we are a couple of staff members down, so we are trying to do what we can at the moment. But so Joanne Hickman, who's also the project lead on North Hobart, she is preparing the planning scheme amendments, and they're basically in step with what was put into the structure plan itself. I'll just talk you through the overarching objectives of the planning scheme amendment, and that is essentially the renewal of those key wide streets as we've talked about and identified in the actual structure plan. So looking at the medium density housing, supplying the appropriate zoning to encourage more mixed use development, providing what we know is a gap in commercial floor space, and looking at minor increases to building heights to help facilitate some growth. All of the planning scheme amendments are also tempered by making sure that we have appropriate building envelopes and setbacks to achieve better water sensitive urban design outcomes. So in terms of zoning, and this is there's no changes as to what was in the structure plan here, but for more information, the best place to look at, of course, is the structure plan. And this is a key element of the planning scheme amendment will be the rezoning of the streets, as you can see up here around those wide streets, and introducing more urban mixed use zone. It's a use that is much more appropriate for this neighbourhood, and the removal of the light industrial land, that particular zone. Of course, existing user rights will be protected. And then building heights, again, we're not proposing any changes to building heights. It is as what is documented in the plan, and the work that we've done around the 3D modelling and making sure that those narrow streets and lots and the heritage listed areas are still protected and their solar amenity is protected, and that is also set out in the plan. And that is also with the building heights comes building envelopes to protect the solar amenity on adjoining residences. I think it's just important that we're trying to enable a future-looking North Hobart by doing these zone changes and minor building height changes. It's about saying what do we want the city and what do we want North Hobart to look like in the future. There's also some improvements around for businesses around without requiring additional on-site car parking and crossovers. So in terms of what's going to happen next, that was a quick sort of overview of the planning scheme amendment. We'll keep preparing the actual scheme amendment, and then that will come back to you as for planning authorities review and approval. And then we will then prepare and certify the amendment. It goes on exhibition for the community, of course. Affected landowners will be contacted, so letters will go out to individual landowners if their property is to be rezoned, notified appropriately. Then reports will be prepared for the Commission. Then the Commission will review it. And then if people have representations, they'll be able to present that at hearings. And then the Commission will ultimately make a call, but there's usually lots of forwards and backwards and conversations. So yeah, we're hoping to bring that planning scheme amendment to you in the new year.
Great.
As quickly as we can.
Okay. Any questions on the planning scheme amendment side of things?
So
Councillor
how long
Dutton.
do you think this will take, this process?
So we're in the drafting stage, so we're hoping to come to you. I don't want to commit just yet because we're so short of staff, but it'll be early in the new year. And then if you certify it and you agree to it, then we've got to prepare the amendment within a certain time frame, and then it's going to go on exhibition for a certain time frame. The Commission have indicated to us that they should be well placed next year to help progress our planning scheme amendments. As we've told them, we've got a tranche of them coming, but that process through the Commission can take several months as well. So, you know, all going well with the TPC process, we might have it in place by end of next year.
Any other questions on this? Councillor Kelly.
Just in light of the Kingborough Council debacle of rezoning, I think it'd be prudent, and you're probably going to do this anyway, to give a really simple explanation to landowners.
Yes.
This is what we are now, this is the ramifications of what it is, and crystal clear stuff, because the last thing we want is another divisive thing like that. And it is complicated, I get that.
It's a good point you've raised, and the Commission have already indicated to us, or they have issued a direction on another planning scheme amendment that we have in place for Central Hobart, and they've requested communications plans. They've requested that we notify each landowner. They've really tightened the ship up in terms of what we put out, and we certainly want to make sure we put our best foot forward. And it is complicated in terms of the language that we have to use in the amendment, but certainly the way we communicate that, we'll use plain English and do our best to explain what potential impacts, and of course if any residents or landowners want to come talk to us, we can talk them through what the impact could be.
Any further questions on the planning scheme amendment part of this plan? Any questions from the floor? There being none. Okay, move on to priority project 2.
Okay, so Condell Place development. I just wanted to talk you through where we're up to with it and just go through exactly what our next steps will be. That first slide there just is just a quick reminder of some of the principles that we found were the most, when we did engagement with the community and different groups, it was really about achieving all of these principles, and this is something that we'd be looking to continue into the feasibility study process, and that's around maintaining some form of public car parking. We do need some sort of open space and greening and community space, making sure we've got those active frontages and site activation, and making sure that we've got better pedestrian connections all around the site. We just wanted to make sure that it was made clear to council around why we're undertaking the feasibility study and why do it before an expression of interest process. A feasibility study provides that objective data on financial, social and environmental viabilities, ensuring decisions are informed rather than speculative. It will highlight potential costs, and I'll talk more about that in a second. It allows council to plan mitigation strategies before committing resources. It should align with strategic goals, making sure that all of our strategic plans and community vision and plans align. And it's about financial prudence. It avoids unnecessary expenditure by determining if the project is economically sustainable before investing, and community confidence and transparency. And having been a part of these processes in other projects, probity is a really important aspect when we're looking at doing anything with council land, and being able to, right from the beginning, have a really transparent process that has that community understanding and input and buy-in right from the beginning is really important. In terms of why we would undertake it before doing an EOI, it should help you provide clear parameters for the EOI, ensuring potential proponents understand realistic opportunities and constraints. It will help attract a more serious and suitable proponent. A well-informed EOI backed by feasibility data reduces speculative or unsuitable submissions, saving time and resources. It helps prevent reputational risk. As we've seen with Kangaroo Point across the way, it can help avoid situations where council invites interest in a project that later proves unviable, which could damage credibility. And it optimises the market engagement. Feasibility insights help tailor the EOI to market conditions, increasing the likelihood of successful partnerships. And it ensures all parties have access to accurate baseline information. So it helps support a competitive and fair process. So we want to make sure everyone's on board the journey and everyone's had that chance to explore options. And that's why we don't want to just go out straight to EOI. I've got some good examples here just to talk you through the good, the bad, the ugly. Crown Square, if any of you have had a chance to visit it in Melbourne. This particular project came at a cost of $70 million to council. They've provided 50 underground car parks, but it's now costing $1.2 million each year to maintain, and it's now operating at a loss for council. The retail leasing and parking revenue has underperformed expectations, and they are now heavily invested into an activation program for the site to try and boost activity. But unfortunately, it has put council in a lot of debt. And so it's an interesting project to consider when councils are thinking of creating an underground car park with open space on top, what sort of financial risk that is to council. Another one is Perth Car Park in City of Vincent. They've got 2 council car parks. Now this is a transit orientated development, so this is a TOD as we would say. So this one has a lot of uplift, and so, but it's in a really well located spot near new transit options. So they've actually upzoned the site. So having come off Sydney Metro project years ago, we were looking at upzoning council land, and that in itself can be a really challenging process. We don't really have to worry about that with Condell Place. It's already got good zoning and good height, but good height control, sorry. But I think it's just understanding that there's a lot of examples in this space happening all around Australia. There was, I guess, a lot of projects in initial stages, but a lot of them are actually coming to fruition now. So we've got lots of case studies that we can talk through. The Inner West Council have just finally signed off on their Fairer Future plan. This is actually quite a huge plan for the Inner West, but for the Inner West Council themselves, they are planning on redeveloping 5 council-owned car parks, and they'll be delivering social housing dwellings. This one's, they're deciding to keep ownership of the land, but they're partnering with community housing providers. Again, there's all different models and different ways to approach this. Another one that's just open for engagement at the moment is the Collingwood Townhall precinct, where they've got a similar size site to ours. They're looking to lease or sell approximately 2,000 square metres of land behind the Collingwood Town Hall to develop new affordable key worker housing. So, yeah, so there's some really good work happening around Australia at all different scales. But I guess in terms of the maturity of local government in this space, with the housing crisis being felt everywhere, open top car parks not what could be all different things and still be car parks. That's where every council right now is looking at. So these are just a snapshot of some.
Great. So,
So I've just got a few more pictures to show you. So for concept, I just wanted to show you some of the work that was done earlier on for Condell Place, where we were considering with the architects MGS who were working with us around what we could achieve for Condell Place. We had lots of conversations about this, but I think it's really important to start to understand what is actually feasible for the site and what is feasible with the current zoning and in terms of the objectives that we're trying to meet. So we're looking at what is great about Condell Place is its orientation. We know we can have a north-facing public space, which is, you know, fantastic in Hobart. We can have an at-grade car park entry underneath. We can have space for community, and we can provide residential development on top. I've got an example here from Glen Waverley, who are also doing something with their car parks. So they're building a new civic precinct, and it's of a scale that is so similar to Condell Place. So I just wanted to show you what this has just been signed off, and they're now in their detailed design phase. But they've got a new civic precinct. They obviously we don't manage the libraries, but in a lot of other states, local governments manage libraries. But they have a new community space, as you can see. So they've transformed a car park and providing a range of different uses. But that's the sort of thing we are envisaging, and we would be working with a consultant who, this is just a snapshot from another project I was working on, but they work with council to do feasibility testing and run through options. And that is what we'd be working through in the next few months once we've got the consultant on board.
great. Okay, so is there any questions first?
Is that with or without parking when you're considering Condell?
I think the best options are to consider a variety of options there. So because of the slope and the type of site arrangements, you'd be looking at how many levels down you want to go. We do think some parking is certainly required. We have quite detailed parking data now that we've got all the parking sensors on. We know that it's very rarely occupied more than 30%. We know we've got those peak periods, and we know we've still got Lefroy on the other side, but occupancy rates are pretty clear in terms of how often it's used, and that is data that would feed into the work that we're doing, just to make sure if we were to still have a council car park and own the council car park, what sort of financial liability it would be to council, because it wouldn't be a money-making exercise.
Could it be less car parks? Or it doesn't matter because only 30%.
Well, it depends on how many levels, so,
The cost of developing it, I think, and the payback.
and how many, yeah.
Yeah.
And that is what the EOI process would like to tease out, to make sure that you do those numbers over and check the financial viability of it.
Councillor Posselt?
Thanks, Lynn, through you. Great work, always. But I think one of the things that struck a chord with me was the Glen Waverley precinct that has library activation. When we go out for EOI, is there a way to really appropriately both engage with government but potentially lead government with your expertise more than anything, in terms of your team's expertise in what may work there from a government-led proposition? So I actually think that a library on the ground floor, community library, not a state library, community library on the ground floor would actually be one of the things that we should consider with whatever above. But how can we approach government to make sure that they're involved?
State government?
Yeah.
That is something that we have been engaged with them previously, but we had only approached them from an affordable housing side of things. We know that there's a shortage of community spaces in North Hobart. We found it ourselves when we were trying to book engagement. So for us, it's about re-prosecuting the demand. Going into the library space is an interesting one. Having done the Ward Street master plan work I did in North Sydney was included the proposition of a new library, but again, New South Wales local government manages libraries, but it was the creation of third spaces, because people aren't necessarily reading, but they need somewhere safe, warm and quiet to go, and a library is that space. And libraries have seen year on year up to 20% growth, because people need those spaces, even post-COVID. So it's about creating a third space, but I think people look for words, and a library is that word.
Yeah.
I think what we would be doing is making sure we've provided a community space, and then it's up to us whether or not the financial viability of the project, I think, is really critical for council, and making sure that you've got the community benefits as well as the financial stability of the project. So we can approach state government. I don't know if we identified a gap in them, because we've got the centre, we've got the library here in town, we've got the one in Glenorchy. I'm not sure whether we could certainly approach the state government around a library in North Hobart, but I don't know if we wanted to be that specific.
Yeah, I mean, I think we clearly identified through our consultation that there was a desire within the community to have a third space, and for that to be a multi-generational space rather than aimed at one particular demographic, and that be connected to some public open space as well. I recall you talking about the space down at Kingborough and how effective that was with the indoor-outdoor sort of relationship there.
Yeah, so we had imagined a bit more like the community hub down at Kingborough, because that flexibility allows for different programming, and that's been working really well for Kingborough. What you'll notice with Kingborough, the yin and the yang, that is a great space, and you can pull back the doors and open it right up. The economic viability of that precinct, though, is suffering.
Yeah,
And
if
so
I could
that's
go through you just for a final comment on that, because that's all I've really got to say. I mean, I think that the Kingborough flexible space works okay when it's working, but it's a pretty dead zone when there's nothing happening.
The scale of it's very different.
Look, absolutely. Yeah. But I guess my leadership that I'm looking for from the team is, third space for sure. But you know, if you did think that a community-based library was a good location for it, the leadership is, well, is the library's location currently actually meeting the needs of the community? I would argue it doesn't, and that I would like to see the city's library shifted to a different space. But yeah, I'd just be really keen to encourage you guys to engage with government and lead government, and whether or not that's something that we maybe retain ownership of that and lease it back to Department of Education, I don't know. But that's kind of where my head's at with that lower grade.
Okay. Other questions and comments? Councillor Bloomfield, Councillor Kelly. Any other questions or comments from elected members at this stage? No. Alderman Bloomfield.
Okay. I'm interested to note a few things. The first one, you had an earlier slide with those alternative concepts that you had as examples, but the outcomes and descriptions of them were not comparative. Like the first one, it lost money. The other two looked like they lost more money, but there was no mention of what they lost. So it seems to be all the examples.
No, no.
Some of them made, I think.
Yeah, there was nothing on there for it.
I think that's what the feasibility study would show us, so, I mean, we can't base it just on this.
Sorry, I wasn't trying to prepare a very detailed financial analysis here. I was just trying to show different examples. The City of Stonington one is one that has been built for some time, but you'll note all that project is a couple of shops, an open space, but a 500 space underground car park. The others have been much more about having a substantial building or uplift component.
Yeah.
And that's the reality of what I was trying to illustrate there.
Oh, okay, no, that's cool. Okay, so that was the first question. The second one was, you mentioned that you'd been noting the parking and use and so forth, but my understanding is that we don't judge parking on the how empty it is. We actually judge it on the peak periods, so how much the peak periods are, and try to ensure that our balance is that the peak period allows at least 15% availability even in its peak period. What are we looking at with our numbers? What do we have anything on that?
If we wanted to have a session where we unpack the parking,
With different people.
I
yeah.
think it's worth doing, but we've got so much data there in terms of the peaks, but and
It's
the
just
troughs.
that when we make generic comments, especially in this room where we're very polarised on parking, a generic comment saying it's 30% available doesn't actually tell us what we actually need to know to make a judge call, because
That's
it's
sort
got to
of
be
it, yeah.
based on this peak
Probably
period.
for the transport team, but yeah, we can maybe
so,
have
yeah.
a separate session on parking
The other thing
data.
was to pull more on what Councillor Posser had mentioned with the library. I've had a fair bit of experience also with not just Mader's House, which I probably like the concept more of, but also of the Kingston Hub, and it certainly does tend to work. The problem we have with Kingborough is that that place done really bankrupted the council with its establishment and everything else, but the park and everything, because the actual cost of maintenance was extraordinary.
Well, they haven't been able to offset the other sites, and
No.
that's been and they're looking at revising their structure plan as a result.
Yeah.
And that was what I was talking about in terms of the council's investment versus what is put to market and the balance, and
Yeah.
that's what we're hoping to tease out with the
Yeah.
EOI.
Well, I very much like the idea of perhaps an in-betweener where, you know, we don't look at a huge barn of Kingborough Hub, but we probably look more at the Mader's House style type design, because that's always busy. You know, we're always using it, all the different bodies are using it, and that will basically generate additional income and people, potentially people who will also use other services and so forth. But the other element that I was also kind of going to question, we've mentioned the parking and so forth. I'd be concerned if we're going to reduce the accessibility of that. So I would like to think that whatever design we come up with, we're going to maintain at least the status quo, so that we don't accidentally, you know, make it more difficult for everyone else around. Because I certainly have been myself where, you know, you've tried to engage with the area, but if you try and go at peak periods, you just give up and go somewhere else, which means that those people lost income because there was another person who could have shopped there that couldn't because they couldn't access. And the same thing happens at Salamanca as well. So I'd like to think that we don't make that any more difficult than it currently is, because it's kind of got to its peak element. But I'd like to make sure that whatever we do, we allow more generic use during the daytime when it's not so busy, which is great. Mader's House style design would do that, but equally too, to keep that balance in with the other would be great. Thank you.
Councillor Kelly?
Thank you. Thanks for the fantastic presentation. And what I like about this presentation is giving us options, and it's telling us some examples of these other areas.
Yeah, it's just to
and
show you, you know.
and that's what we need. And I'd like to get a report that says these are the options, this is what's happened elsewhere, and so that's and facts on the table and some nice diagrams and all that. So that's what I really appreciate in a report, and I think it's fantastic. So well done on that point. Interesting point, I mean, it pins to, and it's not a question, it's just a comment at this stage, is, do we want Condell Street to be a money-making venture, or do we want to do that for public housing and be generous to the community and all that? So that's a decision, I guess, for the table to decide. And it's an interesting one, though, isn't it? I mean, dare I mention the stadium, Dean Coleman's version, I mean, that offered this, for us, for instance, if we went down that road, we were standing to gain $10 million a year through rates and parking revenue. I'm only going what he said. Yeah. I'm just saying, there was significant revenue, whatever that number is, and I'm not trying to be
No, I know,
contentious
but
here. I'm just saying this is the challenge we have is how do we want to use this space? Because what an incredible space
and
it is.
it's just the commitment, and
Yeah.
what we're hoping the feasibility study would be saying, okay, here's your current numbers on the car parking in terms of how much revenue you get versus the cost of running it. All right, let's look forward 20 years, let's look at growth, let's look at, you know, how that would be expected. Are you ready to commit to a three level underground car park that council owns and runs, and those sorts of things? And that's what we'd like to have you guys better informed and understanding some of those market variabilities before you go to the EOI process.
Sure.
Okay.
Just a couple of other ones. I'm just saying it's a challenge for us. How social minded do we want to be, or are we purely out to make money? So that will come into
I
play
wouldn't-
with
yeah,
the decision.
making money, I wouldn't say is probably.
No. I'm just saying, but that is an option.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
so I'm just saying they're the options. I'm just trying to put you in the frame as things
Yes.
I look
No.
at.
No. It's exactly where you
Yeah.
need to be.
Just to concur with the occupancy times of car parks, for example, North Hobart, let's look at what it is. It's an entertainment precinct. The State Cinema gets about 80% of the revenue in evening time, okay, and on weekends.
Yep.
So, sure, you can look at those figures in a whole 24-hour cycle and go, well, it's only been used for 10, 20% of the time. But, by golly, there's those spaces needed to support the entertainment, the restaurants and the cinema.
And it's about if you're willing to pay for the opportunity cost of that.
Sure, and that's when the debacle happened with the parking meters going in,
Yes.
Kelly Grigsby brought that point up. And of course, Mr Carr, Pete Carr, who was writing the statistics side of things and a lot of this sort of thing going on, that, because Kelly said, look, that doesn't apply, and that's why the parking meters came out, one of the reasons they did. So there's that point too. Libraries and all that, they are, I myself funded study tour last year in Oslo and in Dublin and some of the regions there. I visited a number of these community libraries and they are absolutely brilliant.
They are.
And all the rage, and the one in Oslo over multiple levels, from sewing machine rooms to 3D printers to all this stuff, and it was absolutely mind-blowing for me from Hobart to see something like that. The only thing though is it takes mega space, and I sometimes wonder if
the space and the staff and everything.
yeah, but the concept of it is fantastic, and hey, let's have a look at that. And just one thing, and it's I politely disagree with you about the community spaces in North Hobart. There's spaces you can go and rent from the Chinese, the Italian, the Greek. There's the bowls club, there's the football club, and there's a church in Swan Street. So they all do, I believe that there's a lot of community spaces, and that's without mentioning the pubs like Budabisi's got a great big area upstairs that residents groups have met in before, and community groups and all that. So I'd just like to put that point on. That's my lived experience in North Hobart, that does have a lot of...
There are spaces for hire, but I guess that it was raised as a community space that was activated, was a desired outcome.
Can I just encourage everyone that what we're talking about tonight is the going out for a feasibility study. I think we'll have plenty more time in the future to discuss sort of our ideas for when we go to an EOI. So if people can ask questions about the feasibility study and when and how that's going to happen, and focus a bit more on that.
And there's some good points you made about that before going to the EOI, which I didn't realise a lot of that, so that's great. I've learned a lot from your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kelly. Alderman Zuko.
I have a couple of questions in regards to car parking, and you stated that it's used 30% of the time.
That's not a hard and fast figure. That was just looking at the average occupancy rate. So I appreciate, I know when...
So yeah, I know, but you stated the average occupancy rate is 30%. Our elected members will take that on board. Okay.
Oh,
Now,
I'll
I want to
have
ask
to
these
retract
questions. I want to ask these questions. Have all the car parks got sensors in them?
All of them
Yeah.
in North Hobart. I don't believe they've all got sensors.
Okay.
We've put them in Clonell and Lefroy, and
But
those,
every car park in Clondell's got car sensors?
every
Even
council.
even the half hour, weren't they taken out? Anyway, just
about
a
Elizabeth
point.
Street, maybe.
Okay. In regards to the car parking also in Clondell, car parking finishes at 6 o'clock. There's no revenue after 6 o'clock.
Okay.
Okay,
Yeah.
so insofar, if we're going to do a study on the average, maybe we should be doing an average of 9 to 5 or 9 to 6, and then 6 till whatever have you, because that'll give you an understanding of the actuals of North Hobart on what the precinct's about in the business sense.
So we're only purely looking at occupancy rate, not what the cost is.
Yeah, I'm
So
talking about occupancy rates.
Yeah.
See, if you've got a 24-hour car park, right, but the precinct is a night precinct, and and you want to add in the day parts of the precinct into getting a comparison of 30%, of course you're going to get that. But if you do a comparison of the day trade and the night trade, you will see what's the occupancy on the night trade from 6 o'clock to 11 o'clock, and what's the occupancy on the day trade between 8 a.m. and 6 p.m.
Yeah.
That will give you an understanding of the use of the car park and the needs of the car park, and then you won't possibly come to an average of 30%.
Well,
Sorry, I'm gonna be chair here for a moment. We were allocating 20 minutes or so to this item. We're already sort of gone to about 30. We're here to talk about the feasibility study.
And that's what I'm going to get to. That's what I'm going to get to.
And we
I'm
need
going to
to
get to the EOI
and-
very shortly.
Yeah, and we've still
just
got
wanna-
a lot of agenda
that's
items, so
fine.
I need to manage that. So I'm
That's
just
okay.
so I'm just asking everyone to stay very focused on, rather than debate about car parking in North Hobart, let's talk about the feasibility study, when it's going to happen, what's in it, how much it's going to cost. That's what we're talking about. Yes, Alderman Zuko.
Lord Mayor, I didn't interrupt anybody, but it seems that every time I speak, people want to get into the interruption banner.
No,
Now,
I'm just managing the
there
time.
was a statement made about the use of the car park, and I'm giving an example on if you're going to do some studies on the car park, which is going to be important in going forward. Do the studies properly.
I think
Now the EOI process, the expressions of interest. I'd like to know about the EOI process, because you've made points about other municipalities that have built car parks and are losing money and whatever have you. And those councils, have they put out EOIs and own the car park and the buildings, or have they put out EOIs on the site and where they make business deals with property owners, with developers, to maintain the car park? The council maintains the car parks and the public spaces where the developer develops the site. Now, I've done study tours of Melbourne in respect of those particular types of projects, and we've done those projects already in Hobart.
Mm-hmm.
So when we go out for the EOI, are we going to go out for the EOI specifically for the council to own it, or are we going to extend it out to the business sector to see what they come up with the council stating maybe the council owns the car park, or it could end up being a privately owned car park?
I think we won't know that till we've done the feasibility study, Councillor Alderman Zuko, because I think the point is that we're doing the feasibility first to see what we need to do before we go out to EOIs.
Okay.
It seems, is that correct?
And that's it. And look, I threw that figure around before, but that was also considering the 6 till midnight period and the day period, and we've been cutting and looking at all the data, and we've gone down to the actual window of the peak, which is that 6 till 7 p.m. trade. So we will present all of this data, and we'll talk to you about what it means. We know which month and which week and which day is the peak, and the opportunity cost, and whether or not what we want to own. And what I showed you there is lots of examples, and there's lots of different ways to do it. So we'll look at many options.
Councillor Dutta.
Thank you. I just made this observation. When I first came to council the first year, there was a strong push for EOI for Cornell Place. And I'm so pleased now that looking at what you have said and weighing the two, that the feasibility study is the way to go. And I'm pleased with that move. So how much it's going to cost, how long will it take? So from my understanding, it's going to be 40,000. Or is it going to be more, and how long will it take? And what are the processes before we finish this?
Yeah, so having just come off one in Glenorchy before I came over here, you can either have an urban designer do sort of all different building envelopes and things like that for you. We've done a lot of that work with MGS, so we're hoping to work with economists and real estate advisors, so to actually keep the costs down. We're looking anywhere between the 40 to 80,000. And it'll come down to how much analysis they need to do and how many options we wanted to look at. But it's to really understand what the reality is, and making sure that we have our eyes open when we go to EOI,
Yep.
which would be another process in itself. But that way you're also protecting yourselves at every step of the way, and the community will also be across that process.
Okay. I'll just see if there's any questions from the floor on this part, priority project 2, which is the Condell Place feasibility study, before we move on to.
No, so I have one. It's kind of, are we going to be clear in our feasibility study that actually we know what our strategy for the space is? We've got competing interests here. We've got car parks, we've got housing, we've got a whole range of things. And that is all going to, where the weight goes, it will be really important on how you do the feasibility study. And that's a kind of political decision, I suppose, that we need to make, you guys need to make. Particularly as there's a lot of talk about the car parking now. We should be thinking about car parking in 50 years. Do you want North Hobart to be a car park in 50 years' time? Is that what's going to drive the development of North Hobart? Have those issues been thought through? Like, for me, that place always has been set aside, I assume, for a community centre. A community, not centre, focus. Somewhere can focus the community. So we have all these other spaces, but there's no community focus.
So I think the question is, because it is just for questions, not comments, I'm afraid, under our rules. So unless you ask for a deputation.
Well, I haven't explained what the meaning of my question is, so that's the question.
Yeah, so I think the question is, will the feasibility study terms of reference be available for the community, and will it identify, are we looking for profitability, community? I think the terms of reference of the feasibility study needs to articulate what we're looking for.
And
So-
the future focus, I think.
I think the principles of what we established when we developed the structure plan, and that's what's endorsed. So those principles which are set out is sort of where we are focused on, and also understanding the financial viability of whatever's put there into the future, and understanding what the land tenure and whether a council. So one of the options that I put up there that the Inner West Council is doing, whilst they are redeveloping some of their car parks, they're keeping the land ownership, for example, and then they're renting the airspace to social housing. It'll come down to us going with our options, going, this is council going into debt doing X, Y, Z, or this is council making a profit, which would be putting it onto market completely.
So you're not going out with a clear vision of what that place to be?
No. So we do have clear principles for the site. They're set out in the structure plan. So those principles.
Do you want to go back to that? I think it's.
So
it's in this plan.
I do have a slide. Sorry. So what we had established through the engagement period, and the engagement report is available on the Your Say page, is around the fact that we do need to maintain some public car parking. We had gone so far as to say that we would make sure that we maintain the 70 car spots that are currently on the site, that we wanted to have a public open space, and we want it to be in the north-facing corner. We wanted to make sure that there was active frontages with site activation, and that we have those renewed pedestrian connections. We also talked about making sure that there was a housing component because the housing component was so critical in a market, and we're not seeing any housing being built much in Hobart at the moment, so that was another part of the project that was being considered. So yeah, those were the key elements.
So just on the feasibility study though, that will be all quite transparent. We'll,
Yes.
Yeah, make the terms of reference. When we go out, the community will know that that's going out for.
Well,
or that we're starting the work, and when we finish the work and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
I think that's an operational matter, Lord Mayor. I don't think we'd be going out to provide, get endorsement, for example, on the terms of reference.
Oh, no, I'm not endorsement, no. But you'd be saying we're when the feasibility study is done,
Certainly when we get it back, there'll
but
be.
stakeholders can request, if they've got a particular interest, can request the feasibility terms of
Workshop like
reference.
this, do a deep dive though.
Okay, does that answer your question about the feasibility study?
Yeah, okay. I don't really see the vision, but
All right. Any other questions on this item? All right, I'm just conscious we've still got 3 more priority projects and the rest of the agenda. So priority project 3.
Yep, so the Sports Precinct Master Plan. So obviously with the North Hobart Oval, we have a site that has a lot of spaces that are end of life, and we've got competing uses, and we've got the club really wanting to invest. So what we have identified is the need for the master plan, and it's quite a high, it could be certainly quite a high priority item depending on the outcome of this week. So we're hoping to move into developing the Sports Precinct Master Plan around April next year, where we start working out the project plan for the master plan, and that will be led by the place-based urban design group. But again, the principles were established through the structure plan process, and they can be they're all set out in the structure plan. But this is we certainly have identified that we're wanting to create a more active oval that has the ability for the community to have much more use of the space, as well as the creation of a new pocket park, and have more community facilities. So all of that is set out in the structure plan.
Questions on this project? I guess my question would be what would be the cost of a master plan?
We've got the initial budget this year to develop the brief, but the actual budget for the master plan will be in the 26-27 annual plan.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think we've costed it completely yet.
It's estimated to be about $50,000.
Okay.
And so then also before the commencement of the next financial year of April, May, we're looking at progressing on the greener streets component of the structure plan. We know that from the community engagement we've undertaken that we really want to try and get trees in the ground basically, and that's seen as a key priority. So we're looking at doing a street tree master plan for North Hobart, and so our open space and green space teams are ready and will be able to take this work on. This work will be done in-house, so there won't be a budget allocated as such, but it's about doing the assessment and making sure that we've got a plan in action.
Questions on this? Councillor
Yeah,
Wilson.
related to both the previous item and this item, just with the master plan of the North Hobart Oval, it's a little bit maybe not traditional thinking, but just as an exemplar, when we did the Darcy Street master plan, one of the issues that I had with it was that it didn't speak to its surroundings. So like there's a massively problematic intersection that every South Hobartian knows there's a problem right out the front, and we didn't consider the access into the master plan. So is there a way that we can construe the North Hobart master plan to include the streets immediately adjacent to make sure that we consider traffic, consider particularly the sports venue, access, egress, emergency evacuation, so kind of beyond just like stretch the boundaries, if you will, of the master plan, just out a tiny bit.
Okay, so yeah, in terms of its impacts on adjoining streets, and yeah, so there's the scope of the study.
Yeah, scope of the study goes to the other side of
Yeah.
the streets that surround it, rather than it ending at the property boundary and not considering Argyle Street,
Yeah.
Ryan Street and so on.
Any other comments or questions on this priority project? Oh, Councillor Harvey?
Item 5, renewal of privately owned land for housing. That site that's been empty for, I don't know, since I've been in Hobart, I think, 25 years or something. I don't know how long it's been empty. Has there been much engagement with that site?
No, but we're
Just
hoping.
wishful thinking that.
We did receive a pre-application approach probably about 3 years ago, but
It's just been sold.
From memory, it was on the market during the consultation period,
Yeah,
so
so-
it makes it a little bit more tricky, but
Yeah, we're hoping through projects such as this that we start to show, at least indicate what we would like to see. Yeah, and look, it's been sold, so watch this space. And certainly, as the team moves into developing that project plan, there will be those key stakeholders, landowners, having those conversations. So we certainly have a much better idea of what the new landowners have in mind going into the study.
So I've got a question on priority project number 4. Given this was the biggest theme that the public asked about and wanted to see, why is it there's no money allocated to it?
There's no money required at this stage because it's about doing the master plan, and then in terms of getting trees in the ground and actually putting the capex to the project, we haven't reached that stage yet.
My understanding was that it's business as usual from that team's perspective, so they already have some
So how
plans
big
to
is that
progress
team?
greening in.
How big's our urban greening team?
Just take that, I know it's David's area, but
David?
we can find out. That's the open space team.
Yeah. They certainly indicated that they've provided, this is on their schedule of works to undertake, and we had meetings with them plus our transport team to figure out who needs to go first, but it was agreed that the trees, the transport can work around the trees, and that's why this is being prioritised. So there was a lot of internal discussions around that.
All right, now we're up to priority project number 5.
Yep. So this one we haven't got starting for quite some time. There's a lot of moving parts, to use a bit of a pun there. We are prioritising the tree and the master plans of Condell Place and the planning scheme amendments from a resourcing point of view. As we discussed in the development of the structure plan, the bus rapid transit network, that project, it hasn't progressed in state government as quickly as we thought it might. That being said, the state government is still working on the bus rapid transit network. I think after what happens this week, a lot of teams and a lot of moving parts will be able to get back together and figure out where the network and what the network impacts might be if the stadium proceeds. And so that's why we do not have this project starting for quite some time. So.
Any questions on priority project number 5? Any questions from the floor? There being none, thank you. That was excellent.
Yep, thank you.
All right. Now, if we go back to item number 6, which is the reports of special committees, City Transport Committee, someone like to move that? Moved by Councillor Posselt. Any discussion or questions on the City Transport Committee's minutes? Yes, Councillor Dodge.
One question, I find that the Macquarie Street and Elizabeth Street, just with these lights here, they come off pretty quickly and it can be dangerous. I'm wondering if there's any complaint, or something happening there.
We had a staff member got knocked there actually on that.
Would you like me to respond to what I know?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, the team is fully aware that that's a highly contested intersection, but fundamentally Victoria and Davies Street become a primary transport, freight and public transport routes, and so pedestrians get a relatively lower priority at those intersections, which is why they're relatively short, but they still meet the standards required. But you'll notice the green man goes and then it's quite quickly red flashing because the light cycle time is so short. If that's helpful, but
It's problematic.
yeah, I'm happy to follow up if you guys would like. I meet with the transport team as part of it. I'm happy to follow up.
I mean, just the other day, an elderly person crossing and went red, and this lunatic driver just, came so close, and something's going to happen soon.
But there's no alternatives either, are there?
No, not really.
All right, so Councillor Posselt's going to take that one to the
Thank you.
committee
Yep.
next time
I'll
they
check
meet,
the
or to the
transport.
transport team.
Yep.
Thank you. Any other discussion on that one? Move. All those in favour say aye. Against say no. Carried unanimously. Item 7.1 is grants round. This is a receive and note. Would anyone like any questions? I'll move by Councillor Posselt. Any discussion on this one? Or questions? Alderman Bloomfield?
Look, I probably do need to, because I've been contacted by a few different organisations who are quite disgruntled for not getting anything, and I don't know if there's really anything we can particularly do about it, because I put in some questions and I got some good answers back, which was appreciated, because it's mostly about I guess the thing I guess I've learnt from it, other than you know, we do have limited funds. There's a lot of groups who want money, and there's probably more requests than ever to get money, which is fine. But I guess that one element is that we have the ability to probably get them to talk to the Minister of Multicultural, because that now exists. It didn't before, so none of us have really thought to ask them, because she's actually got money to help rescue, which is what I've tried to do with that Chinese one that lost their funding. Although their time frames are completely different to ours, which didn't make it much easier, but at least it was a way of being able to get around it. And also, I guess because there's so many of them, and so many of them are ritualistic based, I suppose, like they happen every year. So we know what they're going to be and roughly who they'll be, and so on and so forth. I'm hoping that this year coming, finally, that the Italian Greek grants will actually be brought in line everybody else's, because that has become a really contentious issue now. When the other community groups say, well, how come they don't have to put together a case but we have to, and then they start inferring other really awful things, and I try to kind of move that along because I have no impact on that. The other thing was whether or not there was a way of perhaps offering more but less, so more grants but less money associated, or looking at a taper-off position, which was supplied to me as well as a possibility, where the little guys are given an easier opportunity to make a start, and as they grow, the expectation is they should be financially independent, so that we should taper off the funding rather than have them always expect that they always get money, because we've kind of created a rod for our own back, and that's probably not what we really want to do. And that was suggested by these groups, by the way. That wasn't actually me pushing back. That was actually coming from out in the wild. So all I'm trying to think of is looking at what else we could do that changes things up, that makes it a little bit easier. The other issue that was had, and I think you guys answered it, was that I think there were two that asked for a lot of money and they got absolutely nothing. They didn't even get a portion, and they were like, oh, I would have been happy with 5. I know I asked for 30. And I thought, well, I can't answer that question, but I don't know whether or not we can change our communication with that somehow. And it possibly was that when they put the application in, they didn't tick the box that said, I'll be happy with it. I don't know. And it's very possible that that's the case as well. But there was just some ideas like that. It was just like, as I said, it was particularly fraught this year. I've never had that many people contact me before, which means that there was a change, and it means that they are distressed. So I'm trying to work out what else we can do. So,
did you want to make a comment about that?
Well, Nick, do you want to?
Yeah, I think so. Pretty much every grant application includes that request for partial funding. So there was only one that I came across this year that didn't request the option for partial funding if it was available. So generally speaking, they go through their individual assessment, and the panel assesses them. And depending on how much funding is available, then that's then split up over the highest priority applicants that are assessed. And where they won't have received partial funding is because the funding's been exhausted once it's gone through maybe the first 4 or 5 applicants. And so by the time it gets down to the ones that have scored lower in the assessment process, and there's unfortunately just no funding still available, which there, as you touched on, Alderman Bloomfield, it's a highly competitive process, and we have limited budget available to go across a number of different grant programs across the year, but it's each assessment panel goes through the same process, and then the panel ultimately makes the recommendation as to which applicants get funding.
Yeah, I was going to say to follow on for that as well. I know that the email I got back, I don't know who wrote it, basically also suggested I can put them through to your department to talk to them about how to improve their application and what you're looking for, and you're fine with that?
Yeah, 100%.
Because I felt like they were trying to make me do that, and I thought, I'm not the right person to ask. but I wanted to make sure I could just blow through and I'll try
We
and
could
encourage
absolutely talk through with them what the feedback was from the panel and, you know, what they need to do to potentially improve their application. We need to kind of keep ourselves a little bit at arm's length, the people that are making the decisions versus the people that are providing the advice, but always happy to have those conversations with them.
Yeah, there might be a few that we do that then. Is it possible though too to look at offering less but just a few more grants, like instead of having to be, you have to do 15, could we just say, look, let's offer 10, that's our maximum, and the rest will be, do you know what I mean? Is that a choice we could make?
You mean within each funding program? How many?
Yeah, because I mean, you know, if we're getting hammered so badly, perhaps if we offer...
Who's getting hammered? I've received nothing from anybody about the grants, so I don't know whether we're getting hammered.
Yeah.
Well,
We're getting hammered?
I've
We're
got-
getting hammered?
We've had
People are
a couple of
disappointed.
conversations with the Chinese Community Association, I think it's called.
And there's the Indian as well,
Yeah.
there was 2 lots of those
The
guys.
Diwali event, which then got some funding through another grant, so I think they were appeased to a certain extent, but it's mainly the Chinese group that we received some feedback from, which was, you know, they were disappointed, but again, it's just unfortunately, they're in a grant program alongside some other competitive applicants and their application just didn't stack up against some of the others
See,
that were recommended for funding.
I think the challenge we have is that we don't have, the state government doesn't have a significant multicultural grants program, so everyone comes to us. And, you know, if the city really wants to kind of lean into being a welcoming city and multicultural city, we may want to consider a separate grants program, which is about sort of cultural festivals, which is a smaller amount, maybe, you know, 7,000, and because I think we're ultimately going to have to grow the pie if we're going to deal with, if we think events are worth investing in.
They've got to meet the criteria. They've got to be able to equip their grants as well. So I don't know why they didn't get a grant, but if they didn't qualify for a grant, increasing the pie is not going to help them qualify.
I think the challenge with those groups
What are you trying to do with the grants? Are you trying to sort of make Hobart the kind of, you know, a city that supports multicultural festivals? Well, but some of our requirements, I think, are more focused on broader economic development, which is quite a different sort of goal to just retaining migrants in Hobart, which is also an economic goal, but it's through their being able to sort of access multicultural grants, which they can in every other state, but our state government doesn't have that.
No, that's not true. That's what I was going to say.
They-
They can now. It's new. And it went through the budget, and that's one of the reasons why everything's slow, is that there was a grant approved, my understanding, tentatively. It's got to be passed through budget. That will happen in the next couple of weeks, and then they might get their money, say, in January. But the problem is that everything they needed it for was, you know, this week, whatever. But the whole point is that it is new, because we have this new minister. She does have a pool of dough. I don't know how big it is, but it is probably comparative to us. So that's why I'm saying that we can push them to have a chat, or perhaps we should liaise with the state government to find out, you know, how do we share the resource and ensure that there's a little bit more fairness and so forth, because we have had to carry everything, I agree, but now we don't, and it's new, and I think that we have something really good here that we could do. But as I said, it's like, it's a new conversation, and we have an opportunity to change things a bit.
So maybe
Two, the pressure I think is new, because some of these groups are new. There's a lot more Indian ones, I think, than there were before. And I know that when we went to Parliament House for the first Diwali celebration, they had these beautiful banners up, and there must have been about, how many others, like about 10 different religious festivals every year. It's like there's almost 1 or 2 a month.
So maybe, I'm just conscious of the time, but how about if, as an outcome from this, Nick and Ben talk to the state government to get us understanding of what they're doing in the multicultural grants program?
I have some connections with that I can pass to you, and you guys can have a chat and see what...
Yeah. Okay, any other discussion on this item?
No.
Any other questions? There being none, I'll move that all those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against say no. Carried unanimously. Item 7.2 is the policy manual review. Is there any... Mr Reynolds is coming up. Any discussion on this? Councillor Dutton?
Just two questions. One is on community engagement. I'm just wanting a clarification here. So the word engagement to me implies something else. Where
So could you point to the exact
community engagement, is that the one you're looking at?
item
7.2
policy?
now? No, 7.1.
Yes, 7.2. So, but which item are you talking about?
Community engagement policy.
On number 1?
Yeah, number
Yeah,
1. Yeah.
okay.
So I'm just, with engagement, it's engaging with people. But with the word participation, when we say community participation, for me, it's involving them in the decision-making process as well. So I'm wondering, the engagement word is aligning with some legislation, that's why you're using that word?
Through you, Chair, it's aligned to the IAP2 principles, community engagement principles, so that's why I use the word engagement. That was your question.
Yeah, so I'm saying if we're using the word engagement instead of participation, so engagement is the word we use
Correct,
because of
yes.
legislation?
Correct, yeah, so it's in line with the IAP2
Okay,
principles, which
yeah,
guides
that's a
our
clarification.
engagement
Thank you.
practice. Yeah.
Thank you. All right, and just one more with regards to the flag raising one. I don't know where it is, I marked it here, but I'm missing. Flag raising. It's page 107.
I think that's item, or appendix 2.4, the flag management policy.
So I think I've read in there that in the Hobart Townhall roof flagpole, there's only the Australian flag. Is it no room for the First Nations flag as well to go on there?
This is right up the top.
Is it-
It's not very visible,
No, it's not.
but I think sorry, someone else. But the town hall flag right at the top, I think, is quite tricky to change regularly. But you're saying put.
To have it permanently.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
Didn't it say that it will be permanent?
I think that's out the back, isn't it, and out
Yeah,
the front.
so,
At the back.
Yeah,
so one is at the back,
there's one at the back, for
Yeah.
the Aboriginal
and
flag,
one is in the front here.
and there's one above the building, which is the Australian flag, and there are about 6 flags poles at the front of the building as well. But that's only an Australian one that's on the top of this building and the HCC.
I'm not sure
as
there's
well.
room for 2 on that flagpole,
Right,
but we
that's
could
what I was
ask.
asking.
We can
Yes.
ask.
Take that one on notice, maybe.
Yeah, please, if there is room for 2, then I'm asking why not.
I think there's just the single flag
Okay.
structure there.
Yeah, it's a little bit out of sight anyway.
Okay,
It's quite high up and you don't spot it anyway, I don't think.
okay, all right, thank you.
Any, councillor Purcell?
Thanks, perhaps I'll to assist Councillor Dunn. It might be helpful to understand if there's been any previous investigations into what is pretty standard, the triple flagpole on Town Hall. That could be putting more poles in to support what we usually do on government buildings. But my question relates to advertising at sport ground policy. My understanding was that we had a clause in our policy that no political advertising was permitted on council land. Is that correct? And if it is, I had a really quick skim because I was a bit short of time today, but I didn't see any reference to that in our advertising in sports grounds, council and sports grounds. I also didn't see, I only saw reference to commercial advertising, not other advertising. And I think that one should probably be plucked out and maybe had a slight better look at, because the majority of our sports fields have significant political advertising in them. And I don't know, there's another clause in there that commercial advertising should only be accepted at the director's discretion if they're providing a significant resource to that club. And again, I would like to just question, I'm not sure how a politician's adding to the club, it is just pure advertising of political nature.
Can I just clarify?
Yes.
So with political advertising, that we certainly have, or sports clubs certainly have sponsorships from members of
They do.
political parties, all parties, haven't said that.
Yep.
And usually the ones I've witnessed, they involve basically identifying the politician involved and maybe where their office is, for example, and that's it.
and maybe the party slogan would be on it. That's the advertising. Is that the political advertising you're seeing?
Yeah.
Or is there
No,
something more?
No, it's more just like Meg Webb member for Nelson or whatever. I guess the question is just, it's one for the table, not for me. You know, do we want politicians advertising? And also, at what point do you draw the line? Can you individually sponsor as a wannabe politician prior to being a politician? What are the guidelines here? What's the ground settings? So I think just a bit more work in that space might be helpful before we endorse it.
And could you be potentially like, does the club get to pick and choose, and is that a problem for us then?
Well, that's right. If you have a bowls club that's just wall to wall, liberals or wall to wall greens,
and they don't
is that actually
treat
what we
everyone
want
fairly?
on our public land? I would argue no. But again, I think this probably needs to come back for a separate workshop, just a brief discussion around the table.
We can certainly look into it, and just from my perspective, being involved in a sports club, often it's a case of sports club approaching politicians, no matter what hue they may be.
Yeah.
And if they're willing to provide a sponsorship arrangement, and it's usually only a small amount of money, by the way, a banner may be placed around the precinct of an oval, for example.
Yeah, I think that's part of the issue with some of the probity stuff of like, oh, we've gone to this particular politician that maybe we have a relationship with or we like, and said, you know, if you give us $1,000, you can have your banner on our sports club council land for perpetuity for $1,000 a year. Is that a commercial rate? Like, there's just so many probity
So
questions.
I think what we've done with these policies is if there's a few questions,
pull it
we'll
out.
just pull that one out and won't pass that one tonight.
So that's
And bring it back
Yep.
next time. Because I had a question about the permitted types of products as well. But if we're addressing it later, then we can do it.
It's actually not a question of advertising, I suspect. It's actually a question of the lease agreement, isn't it? Because it's not the council who's leasing, it's actually the person who's paid rent to use that.
That's right. I think
it's the
policy that informs the lease
So we're talking about, so it's actually a lease policy that we should be discussing in that case, not actually this. That's what I'm suspecting.
I think the policy informs our leases for sports grounds.
Yeah, I mean, I will openly, honestly say that my accounting firm has sponsored stuff. You know, that's why I've got the Argyle Street car park, and I've had that there for years. But that was never a political thing. That's just been, I advertise my firm. Like,
Sure.
So I think there's some other grey elements here too.
So that's why I think we're planning to take this one out and discuss it separately. Councillor Elliott, did you want to talk about it now, or did you want to wait till we come back to it? Or have you got a separate one?
I'm talking about other things.
Whole different one. Okay, so we're going to remove that one and bring that one back. Councillor Elliott, what did you want to talk about?
Okay, I've got a mini list here, but my overall comment, because I'm a stickler for policy, is that just going through the list, you can just tell, it just jumps out so much that you can tell they've all been written by different authors, they've all approached the policy template differently. Some have different types of information under objective versus background, they're all formatted differently, some are dot points, some are, drives me insane. I feel like I just want to do it myself and fix it all. But I think we should get it fixed up, that best practice is obviously consistency. You shouldn't be able to pick up something until that's written by different authors. We need to go, I think that should go back to the business units with the template and an example. Under background, put this, this and this. Here's a sample. And we get them consistent. Yep, that's just a note.
Yes.
It's no, certainly we're looking to ensure there's consistent template application at the very least. And a number of these policies, by the way, are almost generations old.
Yeah, I know.
So, and there's a significant body of catch-up work we're doing at the moment because they sat idle for a few years. So we're trying to
and I realise that. But can we not do that overhaul?
We can certainly. The problem is, as you say, though, they are written in different areas and people have different styles. The template gives a broader guidance, but people have different approaches.
Yeah, but people need another layer of guidance.
Yeah.
They need under this section, type this sort of thing. Under this section, type this sort of thing, and the policy principles, because they're just so disparate.
Yeah, there have been different styles. I take on board.
Take on board the feedback. It's just that I think that you might as well do it properly.
Yeah, I think as I say, we've been trying to. There's been because they've put on hold for some years.
You want to catch up.
We're very much doing a catch up, and I think these are things we can take on board as as we go through the review next time. There won't be that lapse of time going forward.
Okay.
We'll be looking to do these every 2 years.
I'll keep
So
it on my gripe list, okay?
I'll note it on my list.
There's the policy of requests to entertain has been rescinded, and I was wondering if that was a good idea, if I could understand why. Because it says there that we don't get many requests to entertain, but we do get them. I remember there was like what's the stuff that floats in the water, like the microalgae or whatever. They do come up, and I was just wondering, just because something doesn't come up very often, it's still a good idea to have the policy on it. I mean, it was request to entertain rescinded because it doesn't happen often, was the rationale. But I think, is there any comments on that?
No, I'm just reading what you're reading too. And
Yeah.
I don't know if Laura, you want to make a comment on it, but obviously the reason is it hasn't been in frequent use. But if you
Yeah, because I remember like how long ago we had a request for a function from a water sciencey Antarctic group.
That comes to council. That's a council reception. So that
particular one as well.
that does. So if it's a council reception over a certain cost, it has to be approved by the council.
So there is a policy for it.
There must be, but that's only if they're big events, I think. But this might be smaller things.
Perhaps, given what Laura mentioned earlier,
Yeah.
I can sort of draw
Maybe
that
just
at
check.
the moment,
Yeah.
and so we can check that for the purposes.
So, and this is a comment, not a question, but just because something doesn't happen very often isn't a reason to get rid of the policy. If it's covered elsewhere, then great. The competitive neutrality one, that's all tied in now with our competitive neutrality issues and consistent and...
So we have a competitive neutrality issue that we've been working through
Yes.
in regards to the Definitive.
Yes.
What this policy, however, has done is to ensure
Preventative.
it completely reflects what the Treasury position is now. So it's been updated and categorised to marry up. So there's no difference between us and the state government.
Okay, that's good. And then in the caretaker period, there's a new addition in there around under dot point 3 policy. It has in there during caretaker period, elected members will not submit notices of motion, nor will ask questions in accordance with the different sections of the meeting regulations. And the reason I looked up that, because I was wondering if that really would be lawful around from a political belief point of view. And I'm looking at the meeting regulations 2025, and they're current from 24th of June to 2025, so to date. And those references aren't in there. Section 19.1 and 34 of the meeting regulations. 19.1 has no reference to caretaker mode, and neither does 34. So those references don't exist.
I'll withdraw and have those ones checked.
Okay, because there is a state government policy, I think, on caretaker mode, but I don't think it's in the Act.
That's
Lord Mayor,
Well, the policy, I haven't finished.
no, sorry, Catherine, it's just really specific.
I just want to, please stop interrupting, thanks.
Sorry, Chair.
So,
No.
it's just that people get interrupted all the time, particularly Alderman
Yeah.
Bloomfield,
Okay.
and it's really frustrating. Sorry, I lost my train of thought, that's why I didn't want to be interrupted. So regardless, the references in the policy don't marry up with the regulations.
We've not surely.
I'll have that checked for us, but I'll withdraw for the moment until we have that confirmed.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Okay, Councillor Posselt.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to clarify, I was of the impression that Councillor Alderman Barakis moved a caretaker-related motion at some stage, not this term, and that may be the genesis of this policy rather than the
state government's
legislation. I
policy.
don't think it's legislation, I think it came from a nom in the previous term.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure we updated it, but anyway, let's just make sure it all lines
I
up.
think your recollection is correct.
It's correct, yeah.
But I'll check the references though.
Relevant to my comment.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Okie dokie. Any other ones people want to raise? I wanted to raise one, which was the borrowings policy, and just wanted it to reflect, because I think it's somehow borrowings have got separated from investments, and there was a council decision, Councillor Harvey will remind me whether that's correct or not, that we, in terms of the divestment policy, it was meant to cover both, in terms of divesting from fossil fuels, both investments and borrowings.
Isn't that, there's the 3 criteria for investing is there, but it's not borrowing, is it?
It's not in borrowings, yeah. So I just want I want investment and borrowings to basically match each other in line with the, whereas I feel this is a little bit more, this is under 5, this is a little bit more tentative and doesn't mention the divestment. Oh, it does mention, but it just sort of says preferences will be given, whereas our investment says we won't.
I read the 3 criteria that we will definitely not invest in companies that are investing in fossil fuels.
Yeah.
But we still do the best we can to get the best return without investing in them.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's
yeah.
cool. So what's the...
Well, this is the borrowings.
Yeah, so
Which
borrowings
is
and investments are 2
I know,
very different
exactly,
things.
yeah.
I don't know, Michelle, if you want to talk to this anymore, but we are looking at the investment policies at the moment, I do believe.
So the investment one hasn't changed, but just through you, the borrowing is a little bit trickier because we do need Treasury approval and sometimes we have to go through Task Corp, so we don't always have as much of a choice when we're looking at borrowings.
But the whole thing's tricky anyway because all of our banking is done through one of the big 4 because the smaller banks that have more ethical structures don't tender for our services because they don't have the capacity and the complexity of what we need as an institution. Is this correct?
So day-to-day banking, yeah.
That is correct.
So being completely ethical, if we wanted to get out of the big 4, we can't because they're the only ones who provide the services we need. But that doesn't mean we have to invest our money with them. Yeah.
Okay.
And when it comes to borrowing, I assume we've got, like you've said, we're obliged to borrow through certain structures.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Okay, no worries.
Was there any change to that one?
No.
No.
But look, we are very conscious of the broader policy and on the investment side of things.
Yeah.
And we are looking at that as well.
Okay, so with those ones, yes.
I'd just like to add, the reason why we even looked at that was because I had a motion myself, and it was about making sure we had a business case.
Yep.
So it
That's
was really about making sure that this organisation operates on a more commercial basis when it comes to proper borrowings and proper procedure and process. So I'm really grateful that won't be changed because that was a lot of work to get it to where we got it.
But our ethical one went through 15 years ago or something.
Yeah, but you just heard why this one can't change. So.
Okay, so now if there's no further comments, I'll put that motion, which is that apart from the ones that have been filled out, we're approving that. Who moved that? Councillor Dutta did. Moved by Councillor Dutta, recommendation 1, 2, 3. All those, and recommendation 4, I guess, is that these ones be revisited. Yeah. All those in favour say aye. Then say no.
No, just for the record.
No, for Councillor Elliott.
So that will pass anyway.
Okie doke. So now we're on to the midterm review of the City of Hobart Rating and Valuation Strategy. Just a small item. To start at 10 to 7. But no, 8 to 7.
Welcome.
Thank you, everyone. I'll move through this quickly. We've got a PowerPoint, some slides just to talk about the approach to the midterm review of the strategy. You may recall that it was agreed when we adopted the strategy that we would actually review it in 2026, and also that we would do a separate review of the Council's funding of tourism and tourism-related activities post the review. It is proposed that we do that after we've done a service review and the funding future funding for Kanani Mount Wellington is established, and that is part of the recommendations in the report. So we'll go through this quite quickly. I was just hoping to do a little bit of context, but I might skip through that really quickly. Then a little bit of background on the actual review itself and how we undertook the review previously. Some initial outcomes that we've experienced, and particularly what we've done today, which was to reduce the maximum increase cap from 10% to 5% for commercial and industrial. Then to have a look at the review plan, and attached to the report is a project plan for your consideration. And then also have a look at the other items that we have been asked to review during rating, and it's quite separate to what's in the midterm review. And then have a look at timeline and next steps for your consideration. So very quickly, we know that rates are a form of taxation. We have an existing rate resolution, which is based on the rating evaluation strategy that was adopted. The amount of rates that we require comes from the budget, and so any changes that you make doesn't actually impact the amount of rates that we receive. It just impacts who pays what in terms of rates. So the amount charged on the property depends on the property value of each property, which is determined by the Valuer General. And every 6 years there's a full municipal revaluation, but every 2 years, and that's why 2026 was chosen for the review, because every 2 years the state government adopts what we call indexation. And what indexation is basically, it's a property value adjustment factor at the suburb and at the land use level. So it's not for every property, but it is at those levels. So we may see some changes next year, and that of course will impact the distribution of the rate burden. As we know, we moved to capital value from 1 July 2024, and in terms of how the rates are, we have a differential rating structure. We've moved away from single rating in the dollar because we couldn't sustain that and have sustainable rate increases. We have charges for waste management and FOGO, and of course we collect state government fire levy and waste through rates. So just a refresher on the rating evaluation strategy itself, it was a culmination of a 12-month review. You might recall we had 5 elected member workshops to support that work. The outcomes from the review were a move to capital value rating for 1 July. The extensive review found that valuation base was more sustainable and better met the principle of taxation than all the others. We also adopted differential rating, so by land use, ensuring each land use contributed the same amount of the rates burden as they did before under AAV. We thought that was fairer and equitable. And it included the continuation of the differential for short stay visitor accommodation and vacant land. We had the maximum increase cap for commercial and industrial, and that was to take care of the traditional impact from AAV to capital value. And importantly, we put support mechanisms in place for those people with the least capacity to pay. So the initial outcomes that we found was that the outcome was stable increases for most ratepayers, and that was really important. We heard that strong and clear through the review. People wanted to know how the rates would increase year on year. When we actually sent the rate notice out, we received fewer inquiries to our rate notices than any year prior, and I've been working in rates for long time now, so it was any year prior. There was a minimal impact on most land uses, including residential, and of course who make up the bulk of our ratepayers, but we did receive, as we know, some feedback from the commercial and industrial sector on the level of the maximum percent increase cap. So we reacted to that, we've done some work, and that actually formed part of this review, so it was done early. It was done the moment we knew there was concerns. And of course, last year we reduced it down to 5%, and we'll be looking to do that moving forward. So just quickly, I think you'll probably recall this, but this is why we had a cap in the first instance. The move to capital value rating had this effect for commercial and industrial, where a lot of properties paid more, and a lot of properties would pay less in rates. So the maximum percentage increase cap is the tool that works to manage that transition, and of course we've reduced it down to 5%. So the purpose of the midterm review, so you'll be aware actually in the strategy itself there was a whole range, about a dozen outcomes that we were seeking to achieve through this. There's a dozen. So what we want to do is we want to undertake an assessment of the strategy, ensuring that it remains fit for purpose, ensuring that it's meeting the rated outcomes actually established in the review. It continues to align with Council's strategic objectives, which is at the heart of this, legislative requirements, so community expectations, and importantly delivers equitable, sustainable and transparent rate outcomes that meet the principles of taxation. Now, given that it's an indexation year, it's even more important that we view the strategy in light of indexation and what the outcomes might be for individual ratepayers. So the scope is outlined in the project plan. The scope will be designed to assess the strategy against the rating outcomes we said we wanted to achieve through the strategy. So in summary, we'll look at the alignment of the strategy with the strategic objectives, etc., that we've just spoken about. We'll also review the application, effectiveness and fairness of all of the existing differential rates, which will include short stay visitor accommodation and vacant land. So we'll do a review, we'll do an assessment. Are they meeting the policy objectives? Are they meeting the expected rating outcomes from the strategy? We're also going to have a look at stormwater removal and the permanent fire levy. There's differentials there. We want to make sure those settings are correct and they're meeting the requirements. And importantly, considering all of that in an indexation year when property values might change, but they may not change universally amongst the property classes. So how we're going to do it, so it is a stepped approach. It's outlined in the project plan. But the idea is to start off by doing the background research. We're really keen to learn and know from other councils, so that will be really part of this. We'll talk internally, particularly the stormwater team, the finance team, the waste teams, to see what drivers will impact on this review. We'll come up with an issues and options paper, which we will come back and we will workshop with you through a series of the existing budget workshops. We'll be doing extensive rates modelling, and that will be really important to assess the impacts of any change. Stakeholder consultation is designed to really, because it's a midterm review, we're really keen to engage again with those stakeholder groups that participated in the earlier review. Then we'll be doing analysis and recommendations and coming up with any recommendations to bring back to you through the workshops and for consideration and approval by June, so that we can make any changes for the 1 July rating year. And of course, communications and implementation will be really key, so we're kind of transparent and inform the community on the way through. So that was and I've got one slide on the timeline, but that was the review itself. We've also, I just thought it was worthwhile highlighting that we've received requests to have a look at these items as well. Now those items will be considered separate to the review, but they will be considered for the 26-27 rating year. So that work will run in tandem to the actual review.
So where do the requests come from?
They've come from elected member requests that we have received as officers.
Yep.
So the first one, general rate rises in a capital value system, differential rates for undesirable uses, the stormwater service rate is currently a rate, so it depends on the valuation of the property, so we've been asked to look at whether that should be a charge. The fire service rate in Ferntree and Rural, which is established for us, but we've been asked to look at that. A differential rate for hotel accommodation, which you'll recall was considered in the latter stages of the review itself. And the effectiveness and administration of rates rebates, particularly the charitable rates exemption under Section 87 of the Local Government Act. And of course, we're noting what also is being considered is incentives in the Hobart Inner City Council Supply Incentives Policy. So the next steps, if you approve this tonight, is for during the month of December to do the background, and then here's the timelines for progressing all the way through to 1 July next year. So I'll put that forward for consideration.
Any questions on the process?
Okay, I suspect that last one was mine, wasn't it?
It was.
Yeah,
Yes, it
that's
was.
okay, because I was thinking, hang on, I don't think I'm there. Look, I did want to highlight that probably a little bit more strongly because I've had time to think about it. Basically,
Can you put it back up again so we're not...
yeah, it's not going to be useful to me read it. Basically, I'd asked a question, and it was regarding how many buildings or how much value is presently being not really given away, but you know, how much is free? Like how many organisations don't pay rates, and what value of those rates that exists? Like, is it a tangible number? And we have a tangible number. And then I wanted to look at the trend analysis as well. Now I believe that the trend analysis supplied is probably still confidential. I think it's not closed, but it kind of like gave questions to me as to what have we done, because the information that you'll find out later when it's released in the AGM anyway, kind of made me think we changed the planning. We put recommendations in quite some time ago where we changed the use. So, you know, remember we said, if it's retail, it's more than 400 metres in a supermarket, you can't have it. It's got to be discretionary, it's not permitted. And education that was discretionary is now permitted. Well, churches are now permitted, they're no longer discretionary, and education facilities are now permitted and non-discretionary. The thing was that that piece that we recommended and then got approved basically gave the green light to a number of types of organisations that none of them pay rates, and all of them tend to buy really expensive property. We've kind of like opened the floodgates to getting no rates in some of our most expensive properties throughout Hobart. And it concerns me because then I found out that the weight of that is not carried by all of us, it's only carried by commercial, which means that I suspect that there was an impact where the commercial rate load went right up a lot higher than everyone else's did, because they're probably carrying a lot more of this, and it will change more as we go forward, because now that it's permitted use, which means I don't have to go through as much work as anybody else to buy a property and install another charity or another church in our CBD, it's very likely this is going to get worse.
Okay.
So I guess my thing is that this actually needs to be very much heavily weighted in light of potential change, not just today, but potential change in the fact that we may well get more, and it will make it more expensive, more difficult, and start to really pressure businesses unfairly, and that concerned me.
So it is on the list of things to
It is,
review.
but I wanted to put a bit
yeah,
more
to put
context.
us in
Sorry,
context.
I just didn't realise that extra layer made a difference, you know.
Yeah. And some of that might be state planning, the state planning's
Oh no, we influenced, we did that.
zones. Okay.
I'm curious about that one as well. If a religious body has a temple plus 10 other properties, which ones are exempt?
If they, this is a huge topic.
So in order, yes, in order to be exempt, and it's just exempt from general rates, you still have to pay the other rates and charges, you have to satisfy three elements. First of all, the property has to be owned for a charitable purpose, has to be occupied for a charitable purpose, and that purpose has to be exclusive. So and it's assessed on a property by property basis, and if a property has tenancies, it's only the parts of the property that would meet the legislative criteria.
And we'll do a deep dive into this if we proceed with the process tonight. So does anyone feel like the process as it stands needs anything further, or are we happy to sign off on the process and the steps?
Just in terms, Lord Mayor, of the differential rates for undesirable uses, I think that's probably come from me, and it would be good to understand the change of capital value. I've been accused publicly a multitude of times now that the change from A to B capital does nothing to encourage development and instead encourages land banking. Because, again, land value of a vacant car park is very high, but capital value is very low. So I think some of that dot point should be viewed with the lens of perhaps unintended consequences of moving to the capital rating valuation system.
Okay, taken, that's.
Yeah, so we probably need more differentials really to level out a few different specific uses.
Any other feedback? Yes.
Just a quick question. The 10,000 for the consultant, we're going to go ahead with that. Is that needed, do you think? Or wait and decide later?
I think I might decide later. I just wanted to put a cap in the report that it would be for some minor, the last time we used a consultant for benchmarking work, and that worked really quite well.
Yeah, okay.
Yet.
Yeah, no worries, thanks.
Thank you.
Okay.
The differential rate for hotel accommodation, I don't see the Airbnb, or have you mentioned it somewhere and I haven't picked it up?
Yes, it's in the existing strategy, and we will be doing, that will be included in the midterm review for short stay visitor accommodation.
Okay, thank you.
So these were new things,
Yeah.
the last slide.
Thank
The existing will get picked up. All right, if we're comfortable with all that work ahead of us and the time frame for it, moved by Councillor Harvey. All those in favour say aye. Against say no. Carried unanimously. And I think if we're now just at questions. Anyone like to ask a question? Councillor Elliott.
Just in relation to the $100,000 grant that was applied for the Collins Street work between Victoria and Murray, I was just wondering if the federal government were informed that that's a trial, that the $100,000 is towards trial work.
Ms. Abbey, did you want to ask?
My understanding is that some of the works relate to the scram crossings. Some of the funding that we saw relates to.
Oh, some of the 100,000 is for the scramble crossing as well. Okay.
Which was all approved.
So none of that 100,000 relates to the Victoria to Murray?
I don't think so, yeah.
It's for the scramble crossings?
My understanding is that yes, that's
okay.
Right. So the two bundles of work which will go together.
The two intersections? So the work will happen together, but the hundreds of thousands, 100,000 is for the scrambles? Okay.
Not sure, but again, I sent you an email asking that we circulate Councillor Dutter's request from the Transport team. Maybe we can do the same. Councillor, it's amenable to that, probably in writing.
Thank you.
Any further questions? There being none, I'll close the meeting. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.